Hello, my name is Andrew, and today we're talking about 5 reasons why a carnivore diet causes depression and Raw Primal cures it. Alright, so reason number 1 that a carnivore diet causes depression is lack of diversity, and this is thanks to Instagram and TikTok influencers who want to make things seem really simple, like a little too simple, so they only recommend just eating steak, and Mikhaila Peterson was one of the first people to do this. You just see there, she's just eating New York strip steak. I think that's what she started with. And it's a very glamorous, appealing sort of diet, because it simplifies everything down to just one food. And everyone's so overwhelmed by all of these food rules and different diets that it really sucked a lot of people in. But the truth is that even though steak is a complete food in the sense of having lots of different nutrients, it doesn't have them in the amounts or in the correct balance that you need to survive long term, which is why Mikhaila Peterson ended up having to eat more foods than just steak. Just to give you a few examples, steak does not have enough copper, it does not have enough magnesium, it does not have enough potassium, and it has too much of other things, like it is very high in zinc. So what happens is if you just keep eating steak over time, your zinc's going to go up, and then your copper is going to go down, because they compete for absorption. And this is where the term meathead comes from, right? Because if you're just eating steak and you're not eating, liver, for example, which has a lot of copper, then you're going to get this sort of like linear thinking kind of caveman sort of mentality where you're really strong, maybe you can lift a lot of weight, but you don't really have a lot going on up here, especially when it comes to creativity or emotions. You're just kind of like, ugh. Now with Raw Primal, on the other hand, I have over 20 different foods in this bowl. And so not only am I getting way more nutrition than a normal carnivore diet, it also gives me a lot more control over how I can balance my nutrients. Like if I feel like I'm getting, leg cramps or I can't focus, I'm like, well, maybe my magnesium's low. And so I can add a little bit more avocado. And I don't eat many plant foods, but there are some plant foods that balance the carnivore style diet really well because they're just nutrients that are very difficult to get, like magnesium and potassium and copper. Now you might be thinking, but Andrew, I want to eat a pure carnivore diet because I've been told that plants have anti-nutrients and it's going to damage my body. And this is true. There are a lot of plants out there with high toxic loads, but did you know that coyotes eat avocados and wolves will actually eat berries and even grass? You've probably seen your dog eating grass when it needs a little bit more roughage in its diet, and so a small amount of plant foods can actually be really beneficial. Number 2 reason that a carnivore diet causes depression is cooking. Now here's the interesting thing is that pretty much everyone who eats a carnivore diet is cooking their meat, but if you look at nature and all of the carnivorous animals that are on planet Earth, not a single one, not one eats cooked meat. The only time animals ever eat cooked meat is if they're encountering humans and they're desperate, they don't have any other source of food, so they have to scrounge. But even in the case of a wildfire, when animals have other things to eat, they still won't eat even like gently cooked meat. That's because they know that heat and fire destroys nutrients. It destroys vitamin C, it destroys B vitamins, and it kills 100% of the probiotics and enzymes that your body needs to digest the meat. Now the body is capable of making its own enzymes and maintaining a gut flora eating cooked meat. I mean, people go for years with this. All you're really doing with cooking meat is making your body work harder than it has to. Like imagine someone walked up to you and you're like, here's some free money, and you're like, oh, no thanks, and you just burn it, and and then you go to your job and you work, and it's like, why would you turn down free energy? That said, some people do kind of like a hybrid where they'll do rare meat or blue meat, which means just cooking the outer layer and then the inside is pink. But what most people don't know is that once you go above 115 degrees, you start to damage the enzymes, the probiotics, and then once you're above 140, it's basically all gone. And so even if it looks like the inside of a steak is not cooked, you've already destroyed 100% of the probiotics and enzymes. The other option is using an Instant Pot to slow cook meat, and this is definitely better. You're less likely to oxidize fats and so on and so forth, which can lead to cancer. But again, you're going to be way above 115 degrees, so all the probiotics, all the enzymes that are going to benefit your body are just gone. Of course, the main argument most people have against raw meat is that they think that it's going to make them sick, and to be fair, like for the first 34 years of my life, I thought the same exact thing. I thought if I even took just a bite of raw meat or, raw eggs, I was going to get sick. But honestly, like thinking back on it, as a kid, I was always eating raw cookie dough and I never once got sick, even though people told me I was going to get salmonella poisoning. And then last year when I started experimenting with having a little bit of raw meat, I quickly scaled up to eating pretty much all raw meat. And it's been 8 months now, almost a year, and I've never once gotten sick. I've never had any stomach problems, any digestive problems, headaches, not a single negative side effect. And so it's just borderline statistically impossible that raw meat could be as dangerous as people people say, but then I could eat it for almost a year every single day, pounds and pounds, and never get sick. Probably the secret though is that I just get my meat from really high quality sources like North Star Bison, where they have a very high ethical standard and they're making sure to freeze things immediately, and they're killing the animals out in the field, and the animals are roaming free for their entire life and eating a natural diet and not being fed synthetic junk, so that is really what makes the difference in terms of whether meat is safe or unhealthy. And so it's really the health of the animal rather than cooked versus raw in terms of whether meat is going to make you sick. Number 3 reason a carnivore diet will make you depressed is freezing. And a lot of people that eat a carnivore diet just go to the grocery store and they get maybe 80-20 beef and it's fresh. But if you want higher quality meat like North Star Bison, you're going to have to order it, which means getting it frozen. And while freezing is certainly not as bad as cooking, it still does kill off maybe 20% of the enzymes and some of the probiotics. So what I found when I first started eating raw meat is that it just kind of tasted boring, which is what a lot of people report. And the reason for that is that it's sort of like the meat is just kind of asleep, And so what I started doing is when I would thaw it, I just put it in the refrigerator, and then after it thawed, I just leave it there for a few days, and it kind of seemed to like wake up the meat. When I had it, it had a more interesting flavor, and it also had this kind of like blooming effect on me where I felt like I was getting more from it than just when it came straight from the freezer. Still, the effect was pretty minimal, so I started doing some research and I found out that Aajonus Vonderplanitz, the founder of the raw primal diet, recommends doing high meat, which is essentially where you take raw meat, you put it in a canning jar, and you ferment it at room temperature around 72 degrees with a little bit of airflow for anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, or some people do it even longer. And when I had the week-old and then the 2-week-old, it was like a completely different food. The taste had just exploded. There was like tanginess and sweetness and like cheesiness, and some of the muscle meat had even developed this sort of like salty flavor. And at first, of course, I was really worried about this because not only was I eating raw meat, but now I was eating room temperature fermented raw meat, which people in the comments were like, RIP Andrew, but now I've been eating that for months and I've never had a single problem with it. No negative side effects. It is easily like 10 to 100 times stronger than those stupid little probiotic capsules that you can get in the grocery store. I had tried those at various points and I thought like maybe I got a little bit from it, but with high meat, it's just like honestly taking drugs except with 0 side effects. If you're wondering about the difference between high meat and cooking, they both sort of break down food in a way, but when you cook food, it essentially denatures it, which means that it changes the structure of the proteins. And this makes it a little bit easier to start digesting the food, but the rest of the digestive process is no easier. And in fact, it's a lot harder because you've killed off all the probiotics and enzymes that would have helped you digest and absorb it. With high meat, on the other hand, all that happens is that it's sort of like Legos. The probiotics just kind of break down the proteins, but it's still in a natural form that your body recognizes and knows what to do with. So to sum it up, cooked meat is like eating dead garbage, and high meat is like eating pure rocket fuel. Number 4 reason why a carnivore diet will cause depression is dehydration. And obviously when you cook meat, it gets rid of a lot of the natural water. And this is why a lot of people who start the carnivore diet will have such a terrible time of constipation, because the meat is hard and dead and dry, and so their digestive tract just becomes like a trash compactor. With raw primal, on the other hand, you can see that there's just a lot of moisture in there, so your food is containing most of the hydration that you need. And it's well researched that there's a very strong connection between gut motility and depression, because when your digestive tract slows down to a crawl, you can't process energy as fast and you just feel stuck and depressed. Case in point, I was pet sitting for my neighbor's dogs the other day, and when I took them out, they were eating grass like crazy. They were obviously constipated, and it's coming from their cooked dry dog kibble because it just gets stuck in the digestive tract. They need a ton of fiber just to get things moving again. The other factor in this is a lot of carnivore style diets cut out butter, and butter is really excellent for coating the digestive tract so that it runs smoothly. And a lot of carnivores just aren't eating enough fat in general, and fat is another thing that can coat the digestive tract, which we're going to talk about next. As promised, number 5 reason why a carnivore diet causes depression is that people aren't eating enough fat. And fat is absolutely essential for energy. It seems to be like people think that you can get energy from protein, and you can get some, but it's very hard for the human body to break down protein and turn it into energy, because protein is mostly used for building muscles. So again, this is where the meathead thing comes into play. If someone's eating a lot of protein but not enough fat, they're going to be great at sitting at a rowing machine all day long, but they're just not going to have a lot going on upstairs in terms of creativity and emotion and imagination. They're just a big old lump of meat. And I found this out the hard way in the beginning when I was eating super low fat meats like sirloin, and it was just not fulfilling at all. It was like no matter how much I ate, I just felt so tired and depressed. And I could go out for a walk, I could lift weights or whatever I wanted to do, but mentally I just couldn't do anything. All right, so those are the 5 main reasons why a carnivore diet can cause depression, but I have one more bonus reason for you guys. This isn't really about the diet itself, but the sort of lifestyle that seems to go along with it, and that is over-exercising. Like, you will see a lot of carnivores that just look super jacked, and some of them, like the Liver King, are obviously fake, they're taking steroids. But then you have people like Paul Saladino, where all he's doing all day long is just like lifting weights, pushing things, pulling things, doing pull-ups, doing push-ups, and it's like, why? People don't seem to understand that when you're constantly stressing your body with heavy exercise like this, all you're doing is shortening your lifespan, and for no reason too. It's like, what are you doing with these muscles? Paul Saladino goes surfing every day, which is awesome. That's a great low stress activity, but other than that, when is he ever using these muscles that he's training? I mean, isn't the whole point of training for something that you were actually training for something? But for most people, they just go to the gym, they work out really hard, and then they don't use that muscle for anything other than going to the gym. Animals understand this so much better than humans, because you'll see wolves, for example, work really hard to get a kill when they need food, but other than that, they're just like lounging around. They're not even running most of the time, they're not lifting weights, they're not going to the gym. They understand naturally the importance of conserving energy, because the more energy you use, the more you damage your body, the more it has to repair, and the more likely you are to have mutations and cellular damage, and your body can only go through this cycle so many times before it just starts to age. So for me, I'm much happier when I'm just going on a walk or a hike or sitting out in nature, or I don't know, climbing trees, or going on a slow meandering run where I'm stopping to look at things and I'm not pushing myself towards some meaningless metric, because I want to live a long life. I have a lot of things that I want to accomplish, and I don't want to be wasting my time and my health on something that doesn't even matter. If you don't believe me, just look at someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's been working out heavy his entire life. His body is an absolute train wreck. He just had surgery after surgery after surgery, and his body is just falling apart. His joints are completely shot, but he keeps going to the gym for no reason whatsoever. Anyways, those are my thoughts on carnivore and depression and raw primal, but if you'd like to learn more, you can watch my raw primal day in a life video, or check out my high meat vlog to see what it's like eating fermented meat for the first time. Finally, if you have a question about carnivore or raw primal or natural health in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.